It all began during a quiet fall morning in Seattle. The rain drizzled outside as Michael Stone poured his coffee and leaned against the kitchen counter, glancing at the clock. He was late as usual, but something tugged at his mind harder than any meeting her. Her name was Sarah Blake. Michael had met Sarah 6 months ago during a friend's art exhibition downtown. She wasn't loud, didn't wear flashy clothes, and never competed for attention. But when he looked into her eyes, it was as if they carried the weight of 1,000 stories she'd never tell. She was the kind of woman who expressed herself through actions more than words. And Michael, a guy who usually thrived on clarity, was intrigued by the mystery she embodied. The early stages of their relationship were both exciting and confusing. She rarely said "I love you" and never made grand declarations. In fact, Michael sometimes doubted if she really cared at all. But looking back now, he realized she'd been showing it the whole time, just not in the way he expected. One chilly October evening, Michael came home exhausted. His day at the architectural firm had been a mess. Missed deadlines, broken models, and a rough meeting with clients. He didn't say a word when he entered his apartment. He just sank onto the couch and stared at the wall. Sarah, who was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop, closed it without a word. She came over quietly and sat next to him. She didn't ask, "What's wrong?" or "Do you want to talk about it?" Instead, she placed a warm hand on his shoulder and stayed there. That silence, filled with calm, presence and understanding, meant more than any sympathetic phrase. She made him tea, brought him his favorite blanket, and then simply stayed beside him the entire evening, watching an old movie he barely noticed. She never said the words, but she was saying, "I see you. I'm here." As time went on, Michael noticed other patterns. Sarah didn't gush about how much she missed him when he was out of town for work, but when he came back, she had always made the bed with fresh sheets, stocked the fridge with his favorite snacks, and cleaned the little messes he usually ignored. She always said, "I know how tired you get after flights," and that was her way of saying she cared deeply. One weekend, Michael fell ill with the flu. He tried to push through it alone, typical of him, but Sarah showed up with groceries, soup, and medicine. She didn't wait for an invitation. She didn't hover or make it dramatic. She simply took care of him. And then there was the night of the power outage. It was around midnight when the lights went out across the entire neighborhood. The heater stopped, and the apartment grew cold quickly. Sarah was supposed to stay at her place that night, but when Michael texted her about the blackout, she didn't respond. 20 minutes later, he heard knocking at the door. She had walked from her apartment 3 blocks away in the freezing rain just to check on him. She showed up soaking wet, her cheeks flushed from the cold, holding 2 flashlights and a thermos of hot cocoa. "You didn't have to come," he said, stunned. She shrugged and smiled. "You hate the dark more than I do." It was then Michael truly understood. This woman wasn't about sweet nothings and poetic declarations. She was about loyalty, consistency, and the kind of affection that doesn't announce itself but anchors you in every storm. They had their first real argument 2 months into dating. Michael accused her of being emotionally distant. She listened quietly, then got up and started gathering her things. At first, he thought she was leaving for good. But then she returned, not to leave, but to hand him a photo she'd taken. It was a candid shot of him laughing, unaware, from a week before. She'd printed it and put it in a frame. "I don't say it a lot," she whispered. "But I do love you, Michael. I just say it differently." That moment stayed with him. Over time, Michael learned her language. Sarah's "I love you" was in the way she remembered his mom's birthday and sent flowers. It was in how she noticed when his shoes were wearing thin and bought him new ones before he realized. It was how she took photos of them when he wasn't looking and saved them on a drive titled, Us. It was in her refusal to give up on him when he doubted himself. One weekend they went on a hiking trip in Oregon. They set up camp near Crater Lake. Sarah had planned the whole trip herself, a surprise to celebrate his recent promotion. As they sat by the fire, roasting marshmallows and watching the stars, Michael turned to her. "You do all these things, And sometimes I still don't know what I did to deserve you." She chuckled and looked away shyly, then said something he would never forget. "You listened. You didn't try to change me." It wasn't that Sarah didn't feel love deeply. It was that she felt it in a way most people overlooked. She wasn't the type to post about her relationship or share heart emojis in every message. She was the type to protect the people she loved with her time, her actions, and her quiet loyalty. And if she ever did say the actual words, they carried the weight of everything unspoken. The first time she said, "I love you" out loud was nearly a year into their relationship. It was a calm Sunday morning. They were making pancakes. The kitchen smelled like vanilla and maple syrup. Michael was messing with the batter, pretending he was a chef, when he accidentally flung a spoonful onto the wall. Sarah laughed so hard she cried. As she wiped her eyes, she looked at him and simply said, "I love you, you know." He froze. Not because he doubted it, but because hearing it aloud made everything real in a different way. The moment was so simple, but to him it felt like the world had paused. "You do," he said, grinning. "I've loved you for a while," she replied. "I just needed to be sure you'd hear it when I finally said it." In that moment, Michael knew he'd never need to hear those words again. 'Cause he already knew, deeply, completely. Her love wasn't loud, but it was constant. Years later, after they got married in a small ceremony surrounded by friends and family, Michael stood at the reception and gave a toast. "She never needed to say the words," he told the crowd. "She showed me in 100 ways every day. And when she finally did say them, I realized. Love isn't always spoken. Sometimes it's just shown. Again and again." And Sarah, sitting beside him, squeezed his hand under the table. She still wasn't one for public affection or long speeches. But in that small gesture, she told him everything.